The protagonist, a young player, is cut from a top-tier youth academy. The coach's words are not angry but pitying, filled with a quiet, devastating certainty that the boy simply does not possess the factor, the speed, the instinct, the magic. He is told he is a good lad, but not a footballer. This is the birth of the underestimate, a judgment months later, reduced to playing for a ramshackle local team on a pitch that is more mud than grass. The protagonist hits a low point. He contemplates quitting, believing the coach was right. However, in a moment of pure, unadulterated rage and sorrow, he unleashes a strike so powerful it tears the net. It's not a goal, it's a catharsis. It's the first time he feels his own raw, untamed power, a power that formal coaching had failed to see. While his former academy teammates are celebrated in the press, our protagonist begins a brutal, lonely journey. He trains before dawn and after dusk, focusing not on flashy skills but on the fundamentals. First touch, passing accuracy, stamina. He plays against older, stronger, cynical players in industrial leagues, learning to survive with his mind as much as his feet. He is not trying to prove them wrong. He is trying to prove himself right. A chance injury to a first team player forces a desperate lower league manager to watch a training session of local players. Our protagonist is there, anonymous and unseen. During a practice match, he is a ghost, controlling the tempo of the game with simple, devastating efficiency. He doesn't try to score a worldie, he makes the team play better. The manager, expecting showboating, sees something rarer, a leader and a master of control. Years later, the protagonist walks out for his new club against the very academy that cast him aside. It is a cup tie, a David versus Goliath story. The stadium is a cauldron of noise for the favored team. The protagonist is a nobody to the crowd, a footnote in the opposition. He looks at his old coach in the opposing dugout, a man who doesn't even remember him. The whistle blows, and the story shifts from one of survival to one of purpose. The world has a way of speaking for you before you ever get a chance to open your mouth. It takes one look, one glance at your stature, your speed, the way you hold your shoulders when you think no one is watching, and it writes the entire script of your life for you. It whispers a verdict that feels as final as a judge's gavel. It is a quiet, cold, and utterly devastating thing to be labeled, to be measured and found wanting, to be told with a sympathetic shrug and a pitying smile that the fire you feel burning in your chest is not the flame of a champion, but just the flicker of a passing fancy. They will tell you that you do not have it, that the gods of fortune have not blessed you with the magic, the speed, the instinct. They will say, "He's a good lad," as if that is a consolation prize for a broken dream. And in that moment, their words feel less like a judgment and more like a sentence. A life sentence to the stands, to the sidelines, to the role of the spectator in your own life story. You have been underestimated. You have been dismissed. And in that silence, the only voice you can hear is the cruelest one of all your own, whispering that they might be right. But let the story be told. Let it be told of a boy who was cut from the team before he was ever a man. He was just a boy with lungs full of nothing but hope and legs that couldn't seem to move fast enough for the scouts who were paid to find the future. The coach, a man who had seen thousands of boys come and go, a man who smelled of stale coffee and old grass, had looked at him with eyes that were not mean, but were filled with something far more damning, a profound and utter certainty. He didn't tell the boy he was a failure. He told him he was a decent lad. And he said it like it was a tragedy. The boy had walked out of the pristine, manicured training grounds, past the gleaming trophy cabinet of a club that would never have his name on a shirt, and he walked into a world that felt suddenly, terrifyingly small. He was not a footballer. He was just a boy. And for a long, long time, he believed it. The ball that had once felt like an extension of his soul became a foreign object, a heavy, leather reminder of a path that had been sealed shut. He could have quit. Lord knows he came close. He could have traded his boots for a life of quiet anonymity, a life of good lad stories and what if whispers over pence at the pub. He could have let their underestimation define his horizon. But here is the secret, the one they don't tell you when they hand you your release. Paper's underestimation is not a curse, it is a cloak. And in the hands of the truly desperate, the truly hungry, it becomes a weapon sharper than any praise. He found himself on a pitch that was more mud than grass, a place where ambition went to die. It was a gray, God-forsaken Saturday in a town that had forgotten its own name. The players were butchers and bakers, men with bellies and bad tempers, who played not for glory but for the simple, violent escape of a Saturday afternoon. And in the middle of the squalor, this discarded boy, this good lad, felt something finally break. Not his will, but the chains they had put on him. He picked up the ball, his hands trembling with a rage that had been fermenting for months. He slammed it down on the spot, and he ran at the goal. He didn't think about technique. He didn't think about the judgmental eyes of the academy coach. He just thought about the fire that had been told it didn't exist. And he hit the ball with every ounce of frustration, every ounce of shame, every ounce of self-doubt that had been forced upon him. It was not a strike of a footballer. It was the roar of a wounded animal. The ball did not just fly, it screamed. It tore through the netting, not just passing through it, but shredding it, leaving a brutal, gaping hole in the fabric, a testament to a power that had been trapped and now, finally, unleashed. In that moment, the underestimation was burned away. He wasn't a good lad. He was a force of nature. But this is not where the story ends. It is where it begins. The victory was not the goal. The victory was the understanding that his power was not in their textbook or their scouting report. His power was in the silence, in the early mornings when the city was still asleep and he was running up a hill with a sack of sand on his back. His power was in the late nights when he practiced his first touch by kicking a ball against a brick wall, over and over again until the skin on his feet was raw, until the rhythm of the ball became the rhythm of his own heart. He didn't train to be better. He trained to survive. He trained to prove that the voice in his head that agreed with the coach was a liar. He played in the lower leagues, in the brutal industrial towns where football was a religion, and their gods were hard men. There was no glory here. There was no television. There was just the hard, cold, beautiful truth of the game. He learned to read a game not with his eyes, but with his bones. He learned to anticipate the tackle before the tackle was made, to find the pass that no one else could see, to not just be a player, but to be the axis upon which a team turned. He was a nobody. He was anonymous. And in that anonymity, he was forging a spirit of solid steel. He was building a legend in the dark, a legend that was waiting for the light. And then a crack in the great facade, a chance born of another man's misfortune, a desperation from a manager who had seen the same scouting reports, the same tired formulas. He needed a player, and he was forced to look in the wastelands. And so, this factory worker, this forgotten ghost, was summoned to a training session. The stadium was empty, the air sterile. The manager, a man of little patience, expected nothing. He was met by a player who was a ghost. Not a flashy ghost, but a controlling one. In a practice match, he moved like water, simple, decisive, and devastatingly effective. Every touch was a purpose. Every pass was a truth. He didn't try to score a worldie. He didn't try to dazzle. He didn't need to. He simply controlled the tempo of the game like a maestro conducting an orchestra of chaos. The manager, who had been prepared for mediocrity, felt a shiver of something he hadn't felt in years. Awe. This was not a player who wanted to be a star. This was a player who wanted to build a dynasty. He saw the quiet revolution in the boy's game, the rebellion of 1,000 lonely nights, the fire of 1,000 broken promises. He was not just signed, he was anointed. And now, years later, he walks out of the tunnel. The stadium is not the mud pit of his youth. It is a cathedral of noise, a cauldron of electric energy. But the noise is not for him. It is for the giants, for the club that had once looked at him and saw a dead end. The history is on their side. The trophies are in their cabinet. The cameras are on their players. And in the opposing dugout, the same coach, older now, but with the same pitying eyes, looks at the team sheets. He sees the name of his former discard. There is no flash of recognition. He has forgotten the boy. To him, our protagonist is still just a name on a page, a footnote in the story of greatness. But the protagonist is no longer a boy, and he does not just see a game. He sees a verdict. He sees a life sentence being ripped from the judge's hands. He sees the faces of his old teammates, men who never believed. He hears the echo of every good lad, every dismissal, every sleepless night, every heavy pound of the ball against a cold, unforgiving wall. He is not a good lad. He is a storm. The whistle blows, and the roar of the crowd surges, but in his ears it is nothing but a river of static. Because in this moment, the only sound he can hear is the pounding of his own heart, a sound that promises retribution. Let them have their history. Let them have their trophies. Let them have their noise. He has something they will never have. He has the truth of their underestimation, and he has come to the great cathedral of their success not to pray, but to preach. And his sermon is written in the mud of his forgotten pitches, in the sweat of his anonymous nights, in the silence of 1,000 defeats. He is here, not to beat them, but to bury them. Not to silence them, but to make them witness. They can have the fame. He is here for the legacy. The story is no longer one of survival. It is now a story of purpose. Let the game begin. The whistle does not sound like a whistle at all. It sounds like the end of the world. It is a sharp, piercing, metallic shriek that cuts through the damp, cold air of the training ground. But to the boy standing on the edge of the pristine pitch, it is not a signal to stop playing. It is a signal to stop dreaming. It is a verdict. It is a judgment passed down from a height so great that he cannot even see the face of the judge, only the shadow of his disappointment. The world, which had been so full of color just moments before, bleeds into a palette of gray. The vibrant green of the grass seems to wilt. The bright white lines that mark the boundaries of his ambitions now look like the chalk outlines of a crime scene. And he is the victim. The coach is walking toward him, and the boy can feel the weight of that approach long before the man speaks. It is not the heavy footfall of a giant that terrifies him. It is the lightness of it. The coach is not angry. Anger would be a form of respect. Anger would mean the coach believed the boy had the potential to fail. But this walk is casual, unhurried, almost bored. It is the walk of a man delivering news that is not news at all, but a confirmation of something he has always known. The boy has been measured, weighed, and found wanting. And the worst part, the part that will haunt him for years to come, is the expression on the coach's face. It is not cruelty, it is not malice. It is something far more devastating. It is pity. The coach stops a few feet away, close enough that the boy can smell the stale coffee on his breath, the faint trace of wintergreen from the gum he is always chewing. It is a smell that will forever be associated with the death of innocence. The coach looks down at him, and there is a softness in his eyes that makes the boy's stomach churn. He would prefer a sneer. He would prefer a shout. He would prefer to be screamed at, to be called useless, to be told he is a waste of space, because then he could fight back. Then he could summon a righteous anger, a defiance that would carry him through the long years ahead. But pity is a poison that has no antidote. Pity is the acknowledgement that you are not even worth the effort of contempt. The coach places a hand on the boy's shoulder, a gesture meant to be paternal, meant to soften the blow, but it feels like a brand. It feels like a mark of ownership, a stamp that reads, "Reject," in invisible ink that only the boy can see. "You're a good lad," the coach says, and the words hang in the air like the toll of a funeral bell. They are the most terrible words the boy has ever heard, because they are true. He is a good lad. He has never been in trouble. He shows up on time. He listens to instructions. He tries his hardest. He is polite to the staff and encouraging to his teammates. He is everything a coach is supposed to want in a young man, except for one thing. He is not a footballer. The coach doesn't say it with cruelty. He says it with a kind of gentle finality, as if he is doing the boy a favor by telling him the truth before the world can crush him more brutally. "You've got a good heart," the coach continues, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. "And you work hard. I can see that. I can see how much you want this. But this game, it's not just about wanting it. It's about having it. And I'm sorry, son, but you don't have it. You don't have the speed. You don't have the instinct. You don't have that little bit of magic that separates the players from the boys. You're a good lad, and you'll make a fine young man, but you're not a footballer. I'm sorry. That's just the truth. The truth." The coach calls it the truth, as if it is an immutable law of the universe, as unchangeable as gravity, as certain as the rising of the sun. The truth. The boy stares at the coach, his mouth slightly open, his breath caught in his throat. He wants to argue. He wants to scream that the coach is wrong. He wants to point to the hours he has spent in the rain, the extra laps he has run, the way he has studied the game, the sacrifices he has made. He wants to say that magic is not born, it is made. He wants to say that he has fire in his heart, a fire that no scout can measure, no coach can see. But the words will not come. They are lodged somewhere deep in his chest, trapped behind the lump that is forming in his throat. Because a part of him, a terrible, insidious part of him, believes the coach is right. He looks down at his own feet, at the boots that have carried him through so many dreams, and they look ordinary. They look like the feet of a good lad, not a footballer. The coach pats him on the shoulder, a gesture so final it feels like the closing of a coffin lid. And then the coach turns and walks away, already thinking about the next prospect, the next boy who might have. The boy is left standing alone on the pitch, the world reduced to a blur of tears he refuses to shed. This is the whistle of dismissal. It is not a sound but a silence. It is the silence that follows the death of a dream. And in that silence, the boy begins to hear a new voice, a voice that has always been there, but has never spoken so loudly. It is his own voice, but it does not sound like him. It sounds like the coach. It sounds like every doubter, every skeptic, every person who has ever looked at him and seen a good lad and nothing more. "They're right," the voice whispers. "You don't have it. You never had it. You were fooling yourself. You were pretending to be something you're not. You're just a boy with a silly dream. It's time to grow up. It's time to be realistic. It's time to be a good lad." The voice is calm and reasonable and utterly devastating. It does not shout. It does not mock. It simply states the truth, just as the coach did. And the boy, standing alone on the empty pitch, with the cold wind biting at his cheeks and the gray sky pressing down on him like a weight, begins to believe it. But belief is a strange and treacherous thing. It does not arrive fully formed. It creeps in slowly, like water seeping through a crack in a dam. At first, there is just a feeling of numbness, a dull ache that sits in the center of the boy's chest. He walks off the pitch, past his teammates, who look at him with a mixture of awkwardness and relief. Awkwardness because they don't know what to say, and relief because it is not them. He walks past the equipment shed, past the trophy case filled with the names of players who had, and he walks out of the gate. He does not look back. He cannot look back, because looking back would mean acknowledging that the place he is leaving was once the center of his universe. He walks home through streets that seem unfamiliar, though he has walked them 1,000 times. The houses are the same. The cars are the same. The people are the same. But he is different. He is hollow. He is a shell of the boy who left that morning. A boy full of hope and energy and a burning, unwavering belief in his own future. That boy is gone. In his place is a stranger, a good lad, who is walking toward a life he never wanted. The days that follow are the longest of his life. He wakes up each morning with a weight on his chest, a physical pressure that makes it hard to breathe. He goes through the motions of his day, eating breakfast, going to school, talking to his friends, but he is not really there. He is a ghost in his own life, haunting the spaces he used to occupy. He avoids the football pitch in the park. He avoids watching matches on television. He avoids any reminder of the game that has betrayed him. He tells himself he is moving on, that he is being mature, that he is accepting the truth. But the truth is a bitter pill, and it is stuck in his throat. He cannot swallow it, and he cannot spit it out. It sits there, a constant, aching reminder of his failure. He starts to see the coach's face everywhere, in the face of his teachers, who tell him he is a bright student but not a brilliant one, in the face of his parents, who tell him they are proud of him no matter what, but whose eyes betray a flicker of disappointment, in the face of his friends, who are starting to make plans for their futures, plans that do not include him. He is being defined by the judgment of others, and he is powerless to stop it. He begins to question everything about himself. He looks in the mirror and sees a stranger. He examines his legs, the legs that used to carry him so fast, and they look slow. He flexes his hands, the hands that used to control the ball with such delicacy, and they look clumsy. He runs through the memories of his matches, the moments when he felt invincible, and he begins to doubt them. Were they real, or was he just fooling himself? Was every goal a fluke? Was every good pass a lucky accident? The coach's words echo in his mind, a constant loop of judgment. You don't have it. The phrase becomes a mantra, a self-fulfilling prophecy. He doesn't have it. He never had it. He is a good lad, and that is all he will ever be. The boy who once burned with ambition is now smoldering with shame. He is ashamed of the dreams he allowed himself to have. He is ashamed of the hope he allowed himself to feel. He is ashamed of the tears that threaten to spill every night as he lies in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what he did wrong. But here is the thing about shame. It is a liar. It tells you that you are alone, that no one has ever felt what you are feeling, that you are uniquely broken. It isolates you, cuts you off from the people who could help you, and leaves you to drown in your own self-doubt. The boy does not know this yet. He does not know that the coach's judgment is not a fact but an opinion, not a truth but a perspective. He does not know that being underestimated is not a curse but a gift, not an ending but a beginning. He does not know that the fire that has been extinguished in his heart is not gone, just banked, waiting for the right moment to reignite. All he knows is pain. All he knows is loss. All he knows is the cold, hard certainty that he is not enough. He is a good lad, and that is a tragedy. The whistle of dismissal does not just end a dream. It shatters an identity. The boy had defined himself by his football. He was a footballer. That was his label, his badge of honor, his reason for being. When that label was ripped away, he was left with nothing. Who was he without the ball at his feet? What was he worth without the roar of the crowd? He had no answer. He had no compass. He was adrift in a sea of his own inadequacy, and the sea was vast and dark and cold. He started to wonder if the coach was not just right about his footballing ability, but about everything. Maybe he was not just a mediocre player. Maybe he was a mediocre person. Maybe every dream he had ever had was a delusion, a fantasy he had constructed to escape the mundane reality of his life. Maybe it was time to accept his place in the world. Maybe it was time to stop reaching for the stars and start keeping his feet on the ground. He told himself that this was maturity, that this was growth, that this was what it meant to be a man. But it was not maturity. It was surrender. It was the death of his spirit. He watched his former teammates from the sidelines. He saw them on television, in the newspapers, their names in bright lights, their faces on billboards. He watched them score goals, win trophies, and live the life he had dreamed of. And with every success they achieved, the knife in his heart twisted a little deeper. He told himself he was happy for them, that they deserved it, that they had eat. But deep down, a bitter resentment was taking root. It was not resentment toward them. It was resentment toward himself. He had failed. He had not been good enough. He had been weighed and measured and found wanting. And the world had moved on without him. He was a footnote in the story of their success, a forgotten character in a drama he was not worthy to be a part of. He felt invisible. He felt insignificant. He felt like nothing, and that was the cruelest punishment of all. There were moments, fleeting and fragile, when the old fire flickered back to life. He would see a ball lying in the street, and his foot would twitch instinctively. He would watch a match on television, and his body would react as if he were on the pitch. He would close his eyes and remember the feeling of the grass beneath his boots, the weight of the ball at his feet, the joy of a perfectly executed pass. In those moments, he could almost believe again. He could almost taste the victory, hear the roar of the crowd, feel the embrace of his teammates. But the moments never lasted. The voice of the coach would return soft and pitying, and it would extinguish the flame. "You're a good lad," it would whisper, "but you don't have it." And he would deflate, his spirit crumbling like a house of cards. He was trapped in a prison of his own making, a prison built from the words of a man who did not believe in him. And the worst part was that he had given the man the keys. He had accepted the judgment. He had agreed to the verdict. He had sentenced himself to a life of mediocrity. But the story does not end here. It cannot end here. Because there is something in the human spirit, something stubborn and foolish and magnificent, that refuses to stay dead. The boy does not know it yet, but the seed of his redemption is already planted. It is buried deep beneath the layers of shame and doubt and despair, waiting for the right conditions to sprout. The whistle of dismissal was not the end of his story. It was the beginning of a new one. It was the first step on a journey that would take him to the darkest depths of his own soul, and eventually, inexorably, to the highest peaks of his potential. He does not know this yet. He is still drowning in his sorrow, still lost in his grief. But even in the depths of his despair, something is stirring. A voice, barely a whisper, is starting to challenge the voice of the coach. It is a quiet voice, a fragile voice, a voice that is easily drowned out by the noise of his own self-doubt. But it is there, and it is growing. The voice says, "What if they're wrong?" It is a dangerous question, a question that could lead to more pain, more disappointment, more failure. It is a question that could reopen wounds that are just beginning to heal. But it is also a question that could set him free. What if they're wrong? The boy pushes the question aside at first. He cannot bear to hope again. Hope is too painful. Hope is the thing that got him into this mess in the first place. If he had not hoped, he would not have dreamed. If he had not dreamed, he would not have failed. If he had not failed, he would not be in this endless, agonizing darkness. So he pushes the question away. He buries it. He ignores it. but it refuses to stay buried. It keeps coming back like a persistent weed, cracking through the concrete of his despair. What if they're wrong? And the question begins to take root. It is a terrifying question because it demands action. It demands that he get up off the floor, brush off the dust, and try again. It demands that he risk the pain of failure again. It demands that he open himself up to the possibility of being hurt again. And he is not sure he can do that. He is not sure he has the strength. He is not sure he has the courage. He is not sure he has anything left at all. But the question is there, and it is relentless. It whispers to him in the quiet moments. It echoes in the empty spaces. It haunts his dreams. What if they're wrong? And slowly, so slowly he barely notices, a shift begins to occur. The voice of the coach, once so loud and so clear, starts to fade. It is still there, still a presence, but it is no longer the dominant voice in his head. The other voice, the question, is getting louder. It is growing in strength and confidence. It is beginning to sound less like a question and more like a declaration. What if they're wrong becomes they are wrong. And that is the moment the boy begins to heal. It is not a dramatic transformation. There is no sudden flash of light, no choir of angels, no epiphany. It is a slow, painful, grinding process. It is the work of days and weeks and months. It is the work of getting up every morning and making a choice. The choice to believe in himself again. The choice to trust his own heart over the judgment of others. The choice to fight for his dream, even when the world tells him it is impossible. And it is hard. It is the hardest thing he has ever done. There are days when he falls back into the darkness, when the voice of the coach returns with a vengeance, when he doubts everything again. But he does not stay there. He gets back up. He brushes off the dust. And he keeps going. Because he has learned something important. He has learned that being underestimated is not a curse. It is a gift. It gives you something to prove. It gives you a fire that cannot be extinguished. It gives you a purpose. And that purpose is not to prove the coach wrong. It is to prove himself right. The whistle of dismissal is a turning point because it forces the boy to confront the most fundamental question of his existence. Who am I? Is he the person the coach says he is? Or is he something more? And the answer, the beautiful, terrifying, liberating answer, is that he gets to choose. He is not defined by the judgment of others. He is not defined by his failures or his successes. He is defined by the choices he makes in the face of adversity. And in the moment of his greatest despair, he makes a choice that will define the rest of his life. He chooses to believe. He chooses to hope. He chooses to fight. The whistle of dismissal was meant to silence him. Instead, it becomes the catalyst for a roar that will shake the world. It is not the end. It is the beginning. And the beginning is always the most important part of the story. Because in the beginning, the seeds of greatness are planted. And those seeds, watered with tears and fed with determination, will grow into something no coach could ever have predicted. Something magnificent, something unstoppable. Something that proves, once and for all, that the only opinion that truly matters is the one you have of yourself. Let them underestimate you. Let them write you off. Let them count you out. Because their judgment is not your truth. Your truth is written in the fire of your own heart. And that fire, once ignited, will burn brighter than any judgment. It will burn bright enough to light your way through the darkest nights. It will burn bright enough to guide you home. The boy who was cut from the team, the boy who was told he was just a good lad, did not become a good lad. He became a warrior. He became a champion. He became a living testament to the power of self-belief. And it all started with a whistle that sounded like the end of the world, but was really just the beginning. A whistle that was not a death sentence, but a wake-up call. A whistle that said, "You are not what they think you are. You are something more." And the boy in his heart of hearts always knew that he just needed to be reminded. He just needed to be pushed. He just needed to be underestimated enough to find the strength to prove them all wrong. And that is the power of the whistle of dismissal. It is not a defeat, it is a challenge. It is not an ending. It is an invitation to rise, an invitation to fight, an invitation to become the person you were always meant to be. And that invitation, once accepted, will change everything. Because the only thing standing between you and your dreams is the voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough. And once you learn to silence that voice, there is nothing you cannot achieve, nothing you cannot overcome, nothing you cannot become. So let them underestimate you, let them doubt you, let them count you out, because their underestimation is your fuel, their doubt is your fire, and their dismissal is your beginning.